It is safer to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. These are not just words from centuries ago. They are a mirror to the hidden mechanics of power, the very same rules that shape politics, business, and even our personal relationships today. But here's the question. What if the people around you are already using these rules on you? What if right now you're being played without even knowing it? And what if you could learn to turn the same weapons back, to control perception, influence others, and protect yourself from being controlled? Today, we're stepping into the shadowy mind of Niccolò Machiavelli, a man both feared and admired, who stripped away illusions and gave the world a guidebook to raw, unfiltered power. Machiavelli was not a dreamer. He was not a philosopher spinning ideals of a perfect world. He lived in a time when loyalty was fragile, betrayals were common, and kingdoms rose and fell overnight. 16th century Italy was not united like it is today. It was divided into rival city-states, each one clawing for survival, each one ruled by leaders who could be overthrown in an instant. Florence, Machiavelli's city, was a chessboard of intrigue. Foreign powers like France and Spain meddled constantly, playing puppet master with Italian rulers. Machiavelli himself was in the middle of this storm. He served as a diplomat for Florence, meeting kings and warriors, watching firsthand how power was gained, how it was lost, and how often ideals led to ruin. He was arrested, tortured, and exiled after Florence shifted power, and it was in this exile that he wrote his most famous book, The Prince. Not as a fantasy, not as a dream, but as he called it, the effectual truth. The world as it is, not as we wish it to be. Most people only know the surface of Machiavelli, the cold strategist who said it is better to be feared than loved. But there is far more buried in his words. He taught that appearances matter more than reality, that people believe what they see and hear, not what lies beneath. He revealed that loyalty is fleeting, and that fear, when used carefully, creates stronger bonds than affection. He argued that rulers must sometimes do deeds to preserve stability, and that those unwilling to do so would lose everything. But here's the twist few people talk about. Machiavelli was not encouraging mindless cruelty. He warned that fear must never turn into hatred, because hatred destroys rulers. He stressed that manipulation must be bees, like a surgeon's blade, not a butcher's knife. He admired cunning, but he also admired adaptability, the ability to be both lion and fox, strong and deceptive, depending on what the situation demanded. And perhaps the most chilling idea of all, he taught that morality itself is a tool of power. Rulers should appear merciful, honest, religious, and just. But behind the mask they must be ready to break any of those rules if survival requires it. To the world, a leader should look like a saint, but inside he must think like a wolf. And now ask yourself, how much of this still echoes today? Think about politicians, business leaders, even people in your daily life. Think about how often you see one image, but sense another hidden truth beneath it. Machiavelli's lessons did not die in the Renaissance. They are alive, quietly shaping the way influence and authority are exercised all around us. In this video, we will uncover the hidden rules of manipulation and control straight from Machiavelli's The Prince. You will see how fear, deception, reputation, and power structures are used to bend people's will. You will discover how leaders create dependency, why appearances always outweigh reality, and how cunning outsmarts brute force every time. But this is not just about learning how to manipulate others. It is about learning how to see when these tactics are being used on you. By the end, you will not only understand Machiavelli's art of power, but you'll have the clarity to navigate a world where control is the ultimate currency. So stay with me until the very end, because what you're about to learn could change how you see every person around you, and even how you see yourself. Welcome to Psych Algorithm. If you're ready to unlock the hidden codes of power, influence, and human behavior, Make sure to subscribe now and join us on this journey. Before we talk about the tactics of manipulation, we first need to step into Machiavelli's fog of human nature, because for him, the foundation of power was not castles, soldiers, or even laws. It was people. And if you do not understand people, you cannot control them. Machiavelli believed people are not guided by high ideals or noble virtues, at least not when survival or ambition is at stake. Instead, he saw human behavior as rooted in three forces: fear, self-interest, and necessity. These, he argued, were far stronger motivators than love, loyalty, or morality. When fear grips someone, they act quickly. When self-interest tempts them, they bend their values. And when necessity leaves no choice, they abandon whatever mask of virtue they once wore. To Machiavelli, this was not a pessimistic view, but a realistic one, the effectual truth. Let's take self-interest first. He observed that people often pretend to serve others, but beneath the surface, they act to protect or advance their own position. A soldier might pledge loyalty to his commander, but when the battle turns, he will think first of his life. A minister might serve a ruler faithfully, but when offered a higher seat of power, he might switch sides without hesitation. This, Machiavelli explained, is not weakness. It is simply the nature of man. We are loyal when loyalty benefits us, and when it no longer does, loyalty fades. From this comes his second point. Humans are fickle. Loyalty, trust, even love, all of these are conditional. They shift like the wind, depending on who offers more security, more reward, more fear. Today, we can see this in politics, where voters shift allegiance at the promise of better conditions, or in the workplace, where employees leave the moment a better salary is offered. For Machiavelli, this was not betrayal, but proof of a deeper truth. People attach themselves not to principles but to advantage. As he wrote, men are quick to change masters when they believe it serves their gain. Fear, however, is a force that binds more tightly than love or advantage. Machiavelli wrote that people will love at their own choice, but fear at the choice of the ruler. Love is fragile, it depends on goodwill, and goodwill can vanish, but fear endures, because it is tied to the instinct of self-preservation. If people fear punishment, exclusion, or loss, they are far less likely to rebel or betray. Yet, Machiavelli also warned that fear must be measured carefully. Push too far, and fear turns into hatred, and hatred breeds resistance. The art lies in balancing fear so that it restrains people without breaking them. And then comes necessity, perhaps the strongest force of all. When people are desperate, they abandon pretenses. Hunger, poverty, danger. These strip away the mask of civility and reveal the raw core of human behavior. A man who once boasted of honor will steal if his family is starving. A ruler who swore to uphold justice may break his own laws if his throne is at risk. Necessity makes men act, Machiavelli argued, in ways they would never admit under normal conditions. This is why a wise leader uses necessity as a tool, creating situations where people feel they have no choice but to follow. But Machiavelli also understood that human nature respects strength above all. Weakness invites attack, while strength commands obedience. In the wild, predators prey on the vulnerable. In politics, the same law applies. A weak leader is not pitied, he is replaced. People admire power, even if they resent it, because it offers security and stability. This is why Machiavelli insisted that rulers must project strength, even when they doubt themselves inside. Appear weak, and allies drift away while enemies close in. Appear strong, and both allies and enemies think twice. At the University of Mumbai, scholars analyzing The Prince highlight this same point. Machiavelli's realism rests on the idea that people bend towards strength. Yale Insights echoes it by noting that his advice endures. Use it aligns with how humans actually behave. not how we wish they behaved. Power respects power. The weak may beg for mercy, but the strong command it. In Machiavelli's eyes, this was not cruelty. It was simply the structure of human life. If you expect loyalty without incentive, you will be disappointed. If you rely on love without fear, you will be betrayed. If you appear weak, you will be ignored. And if you forget the role of necessity, you will be blindsided when people turn against you out of desperation. This is the human landscape he painted. Fragile loyalties, shifting desires, constant self-interest, and a deep respect for strength. This is why, before we can even begin to understand manipulation and control, we must first accept this darker, more unfiltered view of human nature. Because only by recognizing what truly drives people, fear, self-interest, necessity, and the respect for power, can we understand the hidden mechanics that Machiavelli revealed. Power, Machiavelli believed, does not rest only on armies, wealth, or even laws. It rests on something far more fragile and yet far more decisive: perception. How others see you often matters more than what you truly are. A ruler could be cruel, but if he appears merciful, his cruelty will be overlooked. A leader could be dishonest, but if he appears to speak with conviction, people will call him trustworthy. This is why Machiavelli insisted that a wise man must treat reputation as a weapon. It is not enough to act. You must act in such a way that others interpret your actions in your favor. Appearances, for Machiavelli, were not lies in the shallow sense. They were tools, instruments used to bend opinion. He advised rulers to appear merciful, honest, humane, and religious, and if behind the mask, they were prepared to act with ruthlessness. Why? Because people do not peer into hearts. They judge by what they see. A ruler who cultivates the image of mercy earns loyalty from the crowd, even if he punishes harshly in private. A leader who prays publicly will be trusted as pious, even if he mocks religion in secret. To Machiavelli, morality was not discarded, but repurposed. It became a performance, a theater in which the ruler plays a role the people want to see. But he also warned that appearances must shift with circumstances. Virtue should never be a chain that binds the ruler's hands. If honesty becomes a liability, deception must take its place. If mercy threatens stability, cruelty becomes necessary. Virtue in this way was not an absolute good but a flexible tool. A ruler who clings too rigidly to one appearance, even one admired by the people, risks destruction. The wise leader changes masks as often as the situation demands, always staying one step ahead of those who would judge him. From here we move to Machiavelli's most famous advice. It is safer to be feared than loved, if one cannot be both. To him, love was too fragile a bond. People love at their own will. They can stop loving whenever it suits them. Fear, however, is maintained by the ruler's will. A man might betray someone he loves if the reward is great enough, but he will think twice before betraying someone he fears, because punishment outweighs gain. In Machiavelli's view, love relies on the loyalty of others, but fear relies on the ruler's strength. And strength, unlike love, can be commanded. Yet Machiavelli's insight was sharper than the cliché that fear is better than love. He recognized that fear, if not controlled, can grow into hatred. Hatred is poison. A ruler who becomes hated will face conspiracies, rebellion, and betrayal. No matter how strong he appears, fear binds, but hatred breaks. This is why Machiavelli recommended balance. Inspire fear, but never cruelty without purpose. Punish, but let people see justice in the punishment. Demand obedience, but do not rob people of all hope. The ruler who masters this balance commands loyalty not through affection, but through a calculated respect that blends awe with restraint. The key is reputation. A ruler's reputation, Machiavelli argued, is the foundation of his authority. Reputation shapes perception, and perception shapes obedience. Even if a ruler commits acts of deception, cruelty, or betrayal, these will be forgiven if his public image remains intact. Conversely, if his reputation is damaged, even noble acts will be seen with suspicion. Guarding one's reputation, therefore, becomes a constant battle. Rumors must be silenced, stories controlled, appearances carefully staged, because the people judge not by truth, but by belief. And belief is easier to shape than truth. This brings us to the art of deception. Machiavelli understood that concealment is often more powerful than confession. People trust what they see, not what they suspect. A ruler can hide his true motives behind gestures of virtue, promises of peace, or shows of generosity. These performances disarm suspicion and give the ruler room to act. He compared this to the dual nature of animals. Sometimes a ruler must be the lion, strong and terrifying, but more often he must be the fox, cunning and deceptive, hiding traps under leaves. A wise leader uses both natures, shifting between them as the situation demands. Too much strength without cunning is brute force. Too much cunning without strength is cowardice. Balance both, and power becomes unshakable. Flexibility, then, is the essence of survival. The world is not stable, and circumstances change without warning. A ruler who clings to one way of ruling will eventually collapse. The flexible leader adapts, gentle today, harsh tomorrow, merciful in one moment, ruthless in the next. Machiavelli's fox and lion metaphor reveals this duality. The lion scares away wolves with raw power, but it cannot see traps. The fox avoids traps with cunning, but it cannot fend off wolves. To endure, a leader must be both. This ability to transform, to shift roles as circumstances shift, is what separates the survivor from the victim. Yet perception and deception alone cannot secure power. They must be reinforced through structures, the invisible webs that bind society together. Institutions, laws, and traditions act as shields for rulers, legitimizing their authority. A decree wrapped in the language of law is harder to resist than a simple order. A custom upheld for generations carries weight even if it serves the ruler's interest. Machiavelli knew that power rooted only in personal charisma is fragile, but power tied to institutions becomes durable. By embedding authority in the structures of society, a ruler ensures that obedience continues even when his personal grip weakens. Control also comes from dependency. People who need their ruler are far less likely to challenge him. If their safety, livelihood, or honor depends on his favor, they will tolerate much. Machiavelli advised idlers to create systems where subjects rely on the state more than the state relies on them. Dependency breeds compliance. It makes rebellion costly and obedience practical. The key is not to make people love the ruler, but to make them unable to live without him. Still, force cannot be ignored. Laws and traditions may carry legitimacy, but in moments of crisis, they must be backed by the threat of punishment. Machiavelli understood the delicate use of force. A ruler should not use violence recklessly, but neither should he shy from it when necessary. Violence, when swift and decisive, can establish order and discourage dissent. But it must be used sparingly, for excessive cruelty breeds hatred. Subtlety matters. The mere threat of force often works better than its actual use, because fear lingers in imagination, while real violence can provoke outrage. This intricate dance of perception, fear, deception, flexibility, and control forms the essence of Machiavelli's art of power. Appear virtuous, but use virtue strategically. Guard your reputation, for it is the armor of authority. Choose fear over love, when forced, but balance it to avoid hatred. Conceal your true intentions, showing people only what they are ready to believe. Shift between lion and fox, adapting to every storm. Anchor your rule in institutions and traditions, creating dependency that chains people to your will, and when force is required, wield it with precision, enough to terrify, but not enough to enrage. In Machiavelli's eyes, this was not corruption but survival. He did not paint men as noble beings moved by justice. He painted them as fickle, self-serving, and easily deceived. And for such men, he argued, rulers must play roles, craft images, and bend reality itself to maintain control. To ignore this was to risk destruction. To master it was to hold power. When we speak of Machiavelli, it is easy to imagine him locked in the Renaissance, a dusty figure from 16th century Florence, whispering secrets to princes and dukes. But his observations about power did not stay in the past. They live and breathe today, sometimes in ways so ordinary that we barely notice them. His tactics, stripped of the medieval courts and armored knights, now appear in boardrooms, television screens, social networks, and even in our private conversations. To understand how manipulation and control function in our world, we only need to look around. In politics, Machiavelli's fingerprints are everywhere. Leaders understand that image often outweighs substance. A single speech, carefully crafted, can outweigh years of poor decisions if delivered at the right moment with the right tone. Politicians know that people rarely investigate deeply. They judge by what they see and hear: a smiling face at a rally, a dramatic pause in a televised debate, a photo of a handshake. All these shape perception far more than policy papers ever could. When Machiavelli said it is better to appear virtuous than to actually be virtuous, he described the very essence of modern political theater. Control of public perception is now a science. Campaigns hire entire teams to polish the leader's image, to hide flaws, to magnify strengths, and to bury weaknesses under layers of distraction. Messaging is relentless. Slogans repeated until they sound like truth. Promises delivered in simple words that bypass reason and strike directly at desire. Just as Machiavelli advised rulers to appear merciful, honest, and religious, modern politicians cloak themselves in whatever values resonate with their audience. If faith commands loyalty, they speak of faith. If justice commands respect, they present themselves as champions of justice. But behind these appearances, strategies are plotted with cold calculation: who must be allied with, who must be undermined, and when to switch masks. But politics is only one stage. The workplace, too, is a theater of Machiavellian maneuvering. Influence here often comes less from titles and more from alliances, networks, and the careful use of back channels. An employee seeking power does not always confront rivals openly. Instead, they build subtle coalitions, flatter those above them, and undermine competitors with whispers rather than open conflict. To the boss, they appear loyal and efficient. To colleagues, they may appear cooperative, yet in reality they are quietly placing themselves in positions where others depend on them. Machiavelli would have recognized this instantly. Dependency creates control. In business negotiations, the fox and the lion are both alive. The lion roars with authority, setting terms with confidence and showing no fear. The fox flatters, pretends to concede, hides intentions behind layers of charm, and then strikes with cunning when the opponent is least prepared. Those who master both styles move ahead, while those who cling only to brute force or only to diplomacy often stumble. Behind polished presentations and handshakes lies the same principle. Machiavelli stressed: conceal your true goals until the right moment. Even in personal relationships, his insights surface in quiet ways. Flattery remains one of the most common tools of influence. By telling someone what they want to hear, you gain their trust and lower their defenses. Selective honesty is another tactic, revealing just enough truth to appear open, while hiding the details that might spark conflict. Some even play on the fears or desires of those close to them, using guilt to bind, promises to control, or insecurity to gain obedience. Machiavelli knew that the bonds of affection can be fragile, but fear and dependency are stronger. In relationships, as in politics, these forces shape behavior more than noble ideals of love or honesty. But with all this comes risk. Machiavelli himself warned that fear must never turn into hatred, and deception must never be discovered. If a politician is exposed as manipulative, the backlash can be swift and brutal. Trust evaporates, supporters vanish, and enemies seize the moment. In the workplace, if colleagues discover that alliances were built only to betray, the manipulator may find themselves isolated, branded as untrustworthy. In personal relationships, manipulation may succeed for a time, but when it is uncovered, the damage often cuts so deep that bonds cannot be repaired. Beyond exposure, there is also the inner cost. To constantly wear masks, to always weigh how to appear rather than what to feel, can erode the self. Guilt may creep in, especially when tactics harm others. Paranoia follows, because if you manipulate constantly, you begin to suspect that everyone else is doing the same. Machiavelli admitted that rulers must sometimes do evil to preserve stability, but he did not deny the toll it takes. Living in constant deception corrodes trust not only in others, but in oneself. And then there are the moments when tactics spiral out of control. A leader who relies too heavily on fear may find hatred spreading faster than loyalty. A worker who manipulates alliances may accidentally spark rivalries too fierce to control. A person who plays on emotions in relationships may create a web of lies so tangled that it collapses on them. Manipulation is never a perfect science. It is a dangerous art, always at risk of miscalculation. What begins as clever strategy can end as catastrophe. This is why awareness becomes the first defense. The moment you recognize these tactics in others, their power over you begins to fade. If you know that flattery is often a mask, you can resist the pull of sweet words. If you understand that fear is used to bind, you can ask whether the threat is real or only an illusion. If you see that appearances can be staged, you can look deeper for consistency between words and actions. Machiavelli wrote that most people judge by appearances alone, but if you train yourself to look beyond appearances, you step outside the herd and become harder to control. Testing consistency is vital. Anyone can deliver one moving speech, one generous gesture, one promise. But patterns reveal truth. A leader who speaks of honesty but bends rules again and again shows his nature. A colleague who praises you but undermines you in private reveals their strategy. By comparing words to deeds, you cut through the illusion that Machiavelli said most men rely on. Boundaries are the final shield. Manipulation works best when fear and flattery cross into our decisions. If you allow someone's praise to dictate your choices, you give them control. If you let fear of ostracism or exclusion push you into obedience, you surrender power. Setting firm boundaries, deciding in advance what you will and will not accept, creates armor. With boundaries, even the most cunning manipulator finds resistance. Machiavellian tactics play out today as clearly as they did in Florence centuries ago. They thrive in politics where perception outweighs truth, in businesses where cunning rivals brute force, and in relationships where dependency often rules over love. They carry risks of exposure and costs of guilt. They can spiral out of control, and they can be defended against with awareness, consistency, and boundaries. To see them clearly is to step outside the illusions that so many fall into. And once you see them, you cannot unsee them. We have walked through the world Machiavelli revealed, a world where power is not dressed in noble ideals but in hard realities. We have seen how he dissected human nature, pointing out that fear, self-interest, and necessity guide people far more than virtue. We have seen how appearances matter more than truth, how a ruler must seem merciful, honest, humane, and religious, even if in secret. He is willing to act with cruelty, deception, or ruthlessness. We have seen how reputation becomes armor, how fear often outweighs love, and how adaptability, the ability to shift between lion and fox, ensures survival. We have traced these ideas into our present, where politicians craft images, businesses build alliances, and even personal relationships sometimes rest on manipulation more than sincerity. These are the main Machiavellian tools of power: perception, reputation, fear, deception, flexibility, dependency, and controlled force. Each one is like a blade. In the right hands, it hits with precision. In careless hands, it destroys everything. Machiavelli never denied the danger. He did not suggest that cruelty should be celebrated, or that deception should be endless. What he gave us was not a moral handbook, but a mirror. He reflected the world as it is, not as we hope it could be. That, perhaps, is why The Prince still disturbs us. It strips away comfort and forces us to see how power truly works. But remember this: knowledge is not endorsement. To understand Machiavelli's tactics is not to applaud them blindly. To see how people manipulate and control is not to say you must do the same. What this knowledge gives you is clarity. It helps you recognize when others use these strategies against you. It gives you the awareness to defend yourself, to step outside the illusions that often keep people trapped, and it offers you a choice. You can use these insights to play the game as it has always been played, or you can use them to resist, to change the way power flows in your own life. And this leads to the haunting question Machiavelli leaves us with. Even across centuries, in a world of power struggles, is it wiser to play by his rules, to master fear, image, deception, and control, or to change the game entirely? Can one truly step outside these structures, or do they govern us no matter how much we resist? Each of us must decide. To ignore the rules is to risk being blindsided by them. To master them is to risk becoming consumed by them. That tension is the heart of Machiavelli's legacy. A choice between control and freedom, between survival and morality, between the world as it is and the world as we wish it could be. So now the question is yours to answer. Will you study these tools only to shield yourself, or will you wield them to shape your own destiny? Will you let others control the perception of you, or will you seize the chance to define it yourself? The knowledge is here. The decision belongs to you. If you found value in this exploration of Machiavelli's art of power, then stay with us on this journey. Like this video to help it reach others who are searching for the same clarity. Subscribe to our channel Psych algorithm, where we continue to uncover the hidden codes of human behavior, influence, and power. By joining us, you step further into the knowledge that shapes history, politics, business, and relationships. Knowledge that can protect you, empower you, and challenge you to think deeper about the world around you. This is not just a lesson about the past. It is a guide for the present, and perhaps a warning for the future. So hit that like button, subscribe, and prepare to see the world with sharper eyes. Because once you understand how power works, nothing ever looks the same again.